We are back for part two in the storm of trauma. Now, last week we talked about in the storm of trauma and we introduced the series, and this is something that we're going to be going over for a few weeks. Now, last week we talked about trauma, identifying it, what happened, what trauma is, what life is, and what tests and trials, tests, and tribulations are. And there's a difference. A lot of what people are proclaiming trauma to be is not trauma. It's a test, it's a trial, it's a tribulation, or it's a consequence of sin. Now, we didn't get into that, but it could be a consequence of your sin as well. So, we went through the aspects of trauma, what it is. And this week, we're going to get into some hard stuff because why? It's going to require more from us in order to be healed. And this is the thing that we have to understand about being healed is when we are, in order to be healed, in order to be whole, we must first go through some transformations. We must first yield to the Lord and to ourselves. And we have to flee from the devil. We have to flee from our flesh. We have to flee from carnality because, like the word says, if you walk in the spirit, you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. And the lust of the flesh does not just mean anything that is perverted. It means we lust for revenge? Do we lust for vengeance? Do we lust for jealousy or whatever that looks like? It does not necessarily mean anything perverse. So today, as we get into it, I want to ask you a question. Is this you? Now, as I talk, take a minute to just close your eyes, okay? And as I give you this story, I want you to ask yourself, is this me? Okay, there's a young man who went on a journey. He had two other friends with him, and they all went on a boat ride. And they were in the middle of the ocean, just having a good time and different things like that. However, nobody put on the life jacket. They're good swimmers, they didn't need to. So nobody foresaw the storm that was coming. So and even in when the weather began to change, they still did not prepare properly for the storm. They thought that they could ride it out. They're good. They don't need life jackets. They don't need any of that because they're good swimmers. They all right. So they continue to keep on and they continue to go on about their day. Now, the boat ends up capsizing. Everything is lost. Everything is underwater. They didn't have time to react because a huge wave came and capsized the boat. Now they're looking for the life jackets and they're none to be found. Okay. So they're treading water because they're good. They're swimming. They are good at what they do. Um Now, the young man who went out there with his two friends, they were holding on to each other. They were holding on to things. They had important things in their pockets. They had money because they start thinking about money. When they finally get to land, they're going to need something. They're going to need something to make sure that they are accommodated, or have the accommodations of, food, maybe some shelter, maybe, different things like that. They also had certain things that were heavy on them that weighed them down. So, you talk about the clothes and you talk about the coats and everything, like that, right? So as they continue to swim, because they're in the middle of the ocean, they're not near land. They are treading water. They're just trying to get somewhere. They are out in the middle of nowhere. All right. So now that they're out there in the deep, and this storm has come. Now, mind you, the waves are still hitting. So as the waves come in, it's carrying them, and they have no control over where they're going. But they are still trying to hold on to each other and all of that. Now, one by one, they begin to submerge. The waves begin to overtake them. But the young man who went with his friends, he was holding, he was still treading on, but he was also getting tired. Those things that were in his pockets, the money, the change, the coins, and coins can get very heavy. Clothes can get heavy when they're wet. So those things, he still held on to those things, even though they were causing him to sink. He could last a little bit longer if he would get rid of some of those things, but he's still holding on to them. And the waves keep crashing, but now he's getting tired. Remember, his friends have succumbed to the waves. They have succumbed to the storm. But he's still holding on to, now he's holding on to the loss of friends. He's holding on to, regret, that he didn't put on a life jacket. He's holding on to these things mentally that are also causing him to become submerged. And as he continues to go, the storm continues and the waves continue to crash. He's still trying to swim, but he gets tired, and little by little he always gets submerged, but he'll come back up. But he finally succumbs to the waves, to the storm, because he refused to give up those things that he thought would carry him. Is this you? The mindset that he had no longer gave him the will to live, no longer gave him the encouragement, the tenacity, the resiliency that he needed to rise above the storm, to rise above the waves. He lost his faith. Is this you? Are you willing to hold on to those things that are literally killing you, causing you to be submerged by the storm of trauma that has hit your life? Is this you? Are you still holding on to people that you got no business holding on to? Are you still holding on to the trauma of what people have done to you? You have to ask yourself, is this me? I ask you, is this you? So hold on to that answer and think about it as we go on in today's lesson. There is, there are certain parts of a storm, and we broke down the storms, hell 1, hell 2, hell 3 by the enemy, according to the scripture, John 10:10. The thief cometh not but to steal and to kill and to destroy. But when we are talking about the different parts of a storm, you have the warnings, which makes you prepare. And sometimes you don't get the warnings in time, okay? But you also have preparation. Then the storm comes. And then after the storm comes, then you have, after the storm is over, then you assess the damage. So it's time to assess the damage that has been done. And this takes work. And we probably won't finish all of this today, because when we start talking about doing inward work, then that takes time. And when we assess the damage of the traumas that have happened to us, then we know the type of steps that we need to take. Because I'll tell you, everything is not therapy required. Then we also assess, not only how much damage is done, but was it really trauma, or was it a tribulation, or Was it a consequence of our sin? Or, you know, like we have to assess the damage. So when Hurricane Helene came in, right? When Hurricane Helene came in, after the storm, like during the storm, we lost power. You could hear the winds. You could hear the trees hitting the house, and you could hear a lot of things, right? And so after the damage was done, it was still nighttime. After everything, came and went, it was still nighttime. So we couldn't get up and assess it until the morning time when the sun came out, because that was the only way we could see the damage. There was no way to see it when, in the dark. Um, so when we went out to assess, and everything that we had going on with the house, like we had a huge cleanup process. Now, here's the kicker, and this is what I mean by assessing the damage, assessing what kind of storm, what kind of trauma has hit us. It lets us know what type of cleanup is required. How much is this cleanup gonna cost? How much is it gonna cost us to clean up our thought process, to clean up the victim mentality, to clean up the pity party, to clean up what happened to us? How much damage has been done? Have to ask ourselves that. Okay. So now that we assess the damage, and we're gonna get into that, but when we start talking about assessing the damage of a storm of trauma, let's look at it. Was it something we were complicit in? Is it something that was done to us that was terrifying, horrific? Is it something that we saw with our own eyes that was horrific? Um, did it, what was it? So, like, for instance, taking care of a loved one, that's not traumatic. That is a tribulation. It's not even a test. It's a tribulation. Okay, it is a trial that we're going. Oh, excuse me. That is a trial that we're going through. It's not trauma. Okay. Um, so once we assess that, okay, well, we may not need counseling for that. We may just need a support group. We may need, depending on when you're a caregiver, there's a lot that you carry. There's a lot that you go through. And if someone has not been a caregiver in that capacity, they will never understand what you face and what you go through. So me being a caregiver, um, I understand that no, that is not a traumatic experience. No, that is not something I need therapy for. But I think it's something that I could be a part of a support group, because someone who is someone who is in a support group means that they have been through it or are still going through it, what you are going through as a caregiver. So they know the ins and outs. You can encourage each other, you can come together, you can get that strength, you can get out your true feelings, you can get out guilt, you can get out anger, you can get out frustrations, you can get out all of those different things. So that doesn't require a lot of cleanup. Okay. What it requires is for discipline, patience, a support group, reading up on what you're fighting as a caregiver, um, different things like that. So so understanding, okay, now I know how to clean this up in my life so that I can, function properly in this situation. All right, that's one, right? So when it came to us in with Hurricane Helene, they had um, the cleanup that we had to do. We had to do a lot of cleanup in our yard. There's still branches on the roof, um, but we had to get those down. We lost power. We lost food. Um, and so the cleanup required a lot of money to replace all the food that we lost. Because not only did we have food in the fridge and the freezer, but we also had a deep freezer full of food. Um, so all of that had to be replaced, and then on top of that, we had to clean the backyard. We had to assess the vehicles. We couldn't even, we had to keep using our, what's it called? The solar stuff, in order to keep some type of energy running. We had to keep, like going back and forth trying to find food. So we was eating out because we didn't have power to eat. So we came out an extensive amount of money, um, during that storm. So the cleanup, you know what I'm saying? Like when you start assessing how heavy, because that affects how you spend, that affects your bills, because it affects your emergency fund, your savings, it affects your personal. If you didn't have those, you know what I'm saying? Like, however, there were people in our town, in our county, who had worse damage than us. So it was going to require them a lot more. It was going to require an extensive amount. We had um we had power lines down. They were, I mean, destroyed. Like me and my husband, one the next morning, we had went out, and the power lines were still hot. They were in the roads, and one I thought maybe my husband was trying to take me up out of here, because I was like, hey, I'm like, I got the window down. I'm like, hey, wait a minute, hold up, can you not run over that? Like, you know what you doing? Um, and on my side, you know what I'm saying? So but just a little funny. We good. I promise you, we good. But um, there were power lines destroyed. It took the power company that we had. It took them extensive amount of time, because the grids were messed up. I mean, like, hey, Helene came in and did her thing. You hear me? So although we had damage, there were others who had more damage than us. You had trees that caved in rooftops. You had car accidents that were happening. You had, because of trees being in the road, uh, limbs. I mean, trees were blocking. It was bad. Okay, it was really bad. Um, so I said all that to say this, to prove a point as far as assessing the damage that was done to you. Let's just say, um, you saw someone die in your arms. That's traumatic. That's trauma, to hold somebody in your arms while you watch them take their last breath. Our minds, our brains, our hearts were never meant to endure something like that. It just wasn't, because it does something to your mental. It does. So to see that, um, was hard. Like when my grandmother passed, my cousin, I was trying to get down to, because she was in the hospital. I was trying to get down there. I was, but my husband couldn't get off work. Trying. My dad was trying to get down there and meet up with him so I can get down there with him, and da 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 blah, scoop scoop. But she passed, and my daddy called me in the middle of the night and told me she passed. And so again, there was no longer a rush to get there until the homegoing service. But my cousin told my grandmother that called for me, but I couldn't get there. She asked for me, but I couldn't get there. Um, and my cousin said, Keisha, be glad you didn't. She said, you got the best part of grandma. She was like, you didn't have to see her in her worst state. You have good memories. You have good memories of what you can think about. You have those good memories. You don't have this. And so, although I longed to see my grandmother, I was not able to get there in enough time to be like, hey, grandma, I love you, you know, and just to see her. And I still hold that. But I understand what my cousin was saying. Things like this, our minds just was not, they're not built to take on something like that. And to be able to have that, to where you see them take their last breath, you're talking to them, like, and that is a traumatic experience. That, yes, you when you start assessing, that needs therapy. It does. I mean, it does. That needs therapy. You need time to take time to grieve. That means you need to stop what you're doing, face what's going on. Like, you really gonna have to get a hold on this, because if not, it's gonna mess you up in the long run, and then you're going to wonder why you are messed up down the road. Um, and I'm gonna take this time to just say that this today was really hard to do. Um, and I know I'm saying a lot, because this week has been a week for the books. My husband and I, we lost our spiritual father. He passed. And, he will forever be Dad Browning. He was Apostle Harold K. Browning, but he will forever be Dad Browning. And and it's crazy, because me and my husband was just talking about him like a week prior. And we was talking about everything that he done, how he poured into us, and like, he dad to us, you know what I'm saying? Like, he is. And then not even a few days after that, he passed. And we was like it just took us back. It's a hard one. So this week we this past week we took some time. Like, I even went to a line dancing class, just to get my mind, just to do something different, because I couldn't stop crying. Every think about it, I would cry. Um, and I just was like, because I used it as a form of exercise and a form of release, because, there's been a lot of heavy things that's been going on. And I was like, I just want to do something different, something that I can enjoy, and just do something different. And have exercise while I'm doing it, move my body, you know. So I went, and at first I wasn't gonna go, because it took me everything. I couldn't stop crying. So the fact that I still went, and just to relax and release a little bit of that, it didn't change the situation, but it helped me, because it took my mind off of things, and kind of gave me a little bit more perspective. Um, but me and my husband, we took some time this week. Like, there was, I took a mental day. I, I had to take a mental day, because it, it's a hard thing. So, um, it's still hard, but we did what we had to do to take the time. Didn't know it was going to hurt this bad, but it when someone pours into you and loves you like he did us, you can't shake that. You can't shake that at all, you know. Um, but rest in peace. Dad Browning, Apostle Harold K. Browning, we love you. Now, back to assessing the damage, right? And I shared that anyway because I really want us to assess things that happens in our lives that may not be just traumatic experiences, but they are things that affect us greatly mentally and physically, spiritually. We need to be able to assess the damages because even in trauma, when we look at John 10 and 10, the thief cometh not but to steal, and to kill, and to destroy. He has a three-step process. It all goes together. It's not separate. It's not like I was saying last week, it's not like tornadoes and hurricanes, that um that have they only have one category that happens at one time. No, the enemy didn't design it that way. It's three of them, and they coming. That if you lived for God any length of time, and even if you don't at all, you the enemy's still coming after you because he don't want you to be with God. All right, so now we're still assessing the damage. Okay, your own sin. Did it caught when you were your own sin? Okay, when you committed a sin and you got caught up. Let's just say you were somewhere you didn't have no business being. You were, and you got shot. You knew you weren't supposed to be in that place. You knew that you was partaking in things that you were not supposed to be doing. And so in the midst of that, because with the law, it says, what do they call it? A felony. Um, oh, I am drawing a blank on that. But basically, what they're talking about, a crime. You weren't doing a felony when you did the crime, but because a felony happened in the midst of you being there, you are now a part of that crime. You are a part of what happened. And so you get charged too. So now you're shot. That's traumatic because you don't know whether you're going to live or die. Your family don't know whether you're going to live or die because the family don't know. All the family knows is you were shot and they show up at the hospital. Okay. And then that's when they find out if it was life threatening or, critical or whatever the case may be. So, um, that is traumatic all in itself. That is a traumatic experience. And when these things happen, something happens in our brain. I am not by any means going to break down and tell you, oh, and intricate details, because baby, I don't have that degree. And I ain't finna lie to you about it. But what I do know by the Spirit is that it affects our brain. It affects our mental capacity. Now, what I will suggest is those who are in the medical field and in the scientific field, if you know, put it in the comments. Help us out. Because when we all come together to help a common goal, we all need that information. I'm coming to you from the spiritual side of things. I'm not coming to you medically. I'm not coming to you scientifically out of the information that I don't know. But if there are those who are in the medical field, who are in the scientific field, who does know the information, put it in the chat, put it in the box. Hey, do a video about it and send it to me. I will share it because that's not how I move. I don't try to hoard information or hoard followers and subscribers and all that. That's not what I do, because why? It's a greater purpose. And the purpose is I want people to be healed. I want you to go through this thing and be healed. So when it comes to things happening to our brain, it starts to rewire our thinking. And now we're wondering why these things are happening in our lives, why this is being drawn to us, and all of that kind of stuff. When we start looking at that, you know, let's let's talk about the law of attraction real quick. So if we are in, so let me ask you this. It's just food for thought. Hey, put it down in the comments. If a traumatic experience happens to you, right, and it causes you to change up who you are, so now you're no longer that person. You are this person who has to protect that person, because this person who you used to be is the one who endured the trauma, who the trauma happened to. So for some weird reason, we think that that person couldn't handle it. So now we got to become another person to protect this person. That sound like multiple personalities, don't it? But like I said, I ain't even going there. However, we we have to dump the belief that just because it happened to this person, that this person isn't protected, or that this person couldn't protect themselves. We remember, we have no control over trauma. We have no control over what happens to us. However, we can take steps once something happens. Sometimes you don't even know what to do because it hasn't happened to you. Let yourself live. Give yourself some grace. Trust me, I'm talking to me too. But give yourself some grace. Give yourself some room. It's not your fault. Okay? It's not your fault. But because we can't control what happens to us, like a bullet, like I said last week, a bullet don't have no name on it. So the person who pulls the trigger is pulling the trigger. But whoever that bullet hit, if that aim ain't right, it's going to hit. Even though it was for Sally, Matt, the one who got hit, because the person, Brad, pulling the trigger, didn't know what he was doing. He just out shooting willy-nilly and ended up shooting somebody else. Somebody else got the bullet who didn't have nothing to do with the situation, but was just was in the area at the time. So we can't control what happens to us. You can't control somebody rape you. You can't control if somebody kidnap you. You can't control if somebody tortures you. You can't control none of that. You can't control none of that. You can't control what, you can't control other people, and you can't control what they do. The only thing you can do is do as much as you can to protect yourself. Okay? So at the end of the day, when we start looking at assessing the damage after the storm, we know whether we need therapy or support group, or we just need to come up with some different ideas to cause us to grow, or to read a book. It may be as something as simple as reading a book. So for instance, I'll break this down. This wasn't a traumatic experience, but this is something that I was facing, that I had faced, that I had went through, right? So I was burnt out. I have the gift of helps, right? And I was helping people. I didn't really understand the magnitude of my gift and how I was dishonoring God with it by helping everybody. I didn't understand the anointing that comes with the gift of helps. I didn't understand the honor that came with the gift of helps. I didn't understand all of that. And so I got used up, I got burnt up, and I got burnt out. And I was running on empty, right? Well, my pastor had told me one day, because I was telling him about it, and he told me about the book, Running on Empty. No. Yeah, it's called Running on Empty? and it was about leadership. It was about leaders and different things like that. Um, I think what I'll do is I'll put that book in the description when it's time, when I upload it. So just look in the description for the book, right? Very good book. So I didn't need counseling for being burnt out. I didn't need counseling for that. I read a book. So the cost for me to get fixed was, to fix the damage that was done was not astronomical. It was a $20 book. Okay, well, let me get this $20 book. Let me see what I can learn so I don't put myself in that position anymore. And then I also gave myself to prayer. And when I gave myself to prayer, the Lord started to show me about my gift, the importance of it, and how I'm supposed to assess who to help. Am I supposed to just help you one time? Am I supposed to help you for a season? Or am I supposed to hear your information, listen to you, and then refer you out? So those with the gift of helps, listen, assess that. Because through that assessment, when you put it before God, then you'll know, okay, am I supposed to give myself to this? Because remember, when you give yourself to something, you're taking yourself away from something else. So is this going to require me? Is this going to require me to step away from God or to step away from the things that God has given me to do? Those are things that I had to assess. So when I read this book, I was like, okay, bam. I know I need to do. I need to step back. I need to do this. I need to change up this. I need to change up that. Now, mind you, people didn't like it. When I stepped back, people had something to say. When I'm not I had to start looking at things because now not only am I assessing the damages that was done to me, I'm assessing who did the damage, who helped cause the damage. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So once I started assessing all of that, then I said, okay, I need to leave you alone because you showing your true colors right now because I done told you no. You showing your true colors right now because I don't show up for you. But at the end of the day, you know, are you really adding to my life? Are you a liability or are you an asset? And I know that doesn't go with everything, okay? Because sometimes we be letting people go and God ain't pleased. He be like, I didn't tell you to do that. I'm gonna need you to keep that door open to that relationship because there's something that only they're gonna hear from you. Whoa. See, so this life is not about us, it's about yielding to the Lord. Okay? So when we look at assessing the damage that was done, then we know how to act. We know what we need to do. So we're going to go over three things and we're going to do some more of this. We're going to deep dive more into this next week as well. But I wanted to really get across assessing the damage that was done. All right. So we're going to address forgiving, letting go, and reconciliation. Now, there's a difference between all three. And when we go to the scriptures, I am going to pull up the scriptures. So I want you to write down these scriptures as well. Okay? Because trauma causes darkness. Let's start there. Trauma in itself causes darkness. There's a darkness that comes over our mind, our thought process, our heart, and our soul. There's nothing shiny and bright about trauma. There is not a sunny day when it comes to trauma. It is storms, it is rain, it's a hurricane, it's a cyclone, it's a tsunami, it's it's a wildfire. It's that. It's that. So when we start looking at understanding, are we in darkness? And the answer is when it comes to trauma, yes. If we have not fully healed from it, if we have not went through the process to get healed from it, we are in darkness. And it's hard to see and see what functions in darkness. Okay? What functions in the dark? Come on. What functions in the dark? Sin. What they say what song Freaks Come Out at Night? That's the music I grew up on. Freaks come out at night. All right. Things happen at night. The enemy is busy at night. His witches and his warlocks are working at night. Like there's in a dark time, is you don't have good times in dark times. You don't have sunny days in dark times. That's why it's called dark times. Is dark, and you can't see like you need to see when you're in a dark place. You can't speak the things that you need to speak when you're in a dark place. You can't move like you need to move when you're in a dark place, because that dark place is going to limit your movement, your eyesight, what you hear, and what you do. It's going to limit all of that. All of that. And even when you think about it, at night, people are asleep. Why? Because there's not too much you can do in that nighttime. It's when it's dark, it's period. That there is no sunny day. Yeah, you got the moon to shine a little light, but it ain't bright enough to help you move. It's not bright enough to help you see. No. Okay. Challenge me on it. All right. Go outside and drive a car without your headlights, without lights being on. You got the moon and you got the stars, and they bright and shiny. But I guarantee you this, they don't shine bright enough, because if you don't have on your lights, you gonna have a hard time trying to figure out where you going. And even the people that are driving on the street with you can't see you, therefore they hit you. You can't drive at night without some headlights, some bright light. And even the headlights don't give you what you need sometimes. And you going to have to go ahead turn on them bright lights. So, again, you may have a little light, little moon, little star, but you don't have the sunshine. Okay? So it's dark. This is a dark time. And so let's start with 1 John chapter 2, verses 9 through 11. It says, he that says he is in the light and hate his brother is in darkness even until now. He that loves his brother abides in the light, and there is none occasion of stumbling in him. But he that hates his brother is in darkness. He that hates his brother is in darkness and walks in darkness and knows not where he goes, because that darkness has blinded his eyes. Let's, for the sake of argument, let's put something else there. But he that hates the one who trespassed him, but he that hates the one who crossed his boundaries, but he who hates the one who did a horrific thing to them, but he who hates the one, I'm going to just say the one, you fill in the blanks, is in darkness. It did not say, the brother who did him wrong. It didn't say none of that. It didn't even say, a brother who you were holding a grudge against for no reason. It didn't even say that. It just said, but he who hates his brother, like I said, who hates the one, is in darkness and walks in darkness. Walks in darkness. So your movement ain't by the light. Your movement is not by the sun. Your movement is not by the morning dew. Is not by the light of day. You walk in darkness. The enemy see you. Your enemy see you. They see you walking in darkness because they in it. And they pulled you, they pulled you into the vortex of their darkness. Mm-hmm. And knows not where he goes. You don't know where you're going when you're walking in that darkness, because that darkness has blinded your eyes. I could end it right there. With everything that we just spoke about, I could end it with that verse alone. But hey, keep going on hating the people that done something to you, that done crossed your boundaries, that done ticked you off, that done spoke against you, lied on you, betrayed you, and all that. Go ahead. Go right ahead. I'm not saying that you don't have the right to feel those things, but what I am saying, there comes a point, if you want to get to the healing, if you want to get here where you're healed and you're whole, then to get from here, there's something in the middle that you got to do, and that is forgive, let go, and reconcile. Now, before y'all start jumping and going off in the comments, because we're gonna get more into it next week. But I'm not talking about reconciling in the fact that you got to go hang out, be buddy buddy. We're talking about reconciling them back to Christ, reconciling them back to God. But if you bear with me, because we're gonna talk about it more next week. Yeah, I'm gonna leave y'all on a cliffhanger like a good book, baby. I'm gonna leave you there. I'm gonna leave you there because, like I told y'all, this is some hard stuff, and we not just gonna hop over some hard stuff. We're going to talk about some hard stuff, some stuff that we got to do, some inward work. So, yeah, I'm going to leave y'all on that cliffhanger. Leave y'all on that. But write down these scriptures, read these scriptures. And so when we come back next week, these scriptures are familiar to you. They're in your spirit. Read them like three times this week. Get it in your spirit. Go before God. Get in the study and see what he says to you too before we get into this lesson. See, that's how you prepare your heart for the word that you've been looking for. You've been praying about things and all of that, and God has sent you a word, but because you have not prepared your heart for that word, it's not taking root, it's not taking soil. So you get into them feel good messages. They help you feel good for a moment, but they still do not answer your prayer. Just saying. So prepare your hearts for the lesson for next week, because again, we're doing some hard stuff. So that was 1 John chapter 2, verses 9 through 11. 1 John chapter 2, 9 through 11. The second one is 1 John chapter 4, verse 18. 1 John chapter 4, verses 18. Then we have Matthew chapter 18, verses 21 through 35. Matthew 18, verses 21 through 35. Then we have 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 18 through 21. Again, that is 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 18 through 21. All right, so next week we are going to talk about forgiving, the difference between forgiving, letting go, and reconciliation, and what is required for each phase. I want y'all to think back to the story that I shared with you earlier, starting off. Is that you holding on to something that you think you need that's going to help you get to where you want to go, but it's keeping you submerged in a place where you don't want to be? Is that you? Are you drowning in a sea, in an ocean full of raw emotions that you have no control over. Well, that you do have control over, but are controlling you, is what I should say. Is that you? If it is, then you probably need to listen to this one more time, and you will want to return next week. All right? So, again, prepare your hearts for where we're going to go, because when we start getting into the nitty gritty of this, um, we're gonna get into some hard stuff. We're gonna get to the healing place where we're healed and whole. So I'll see you guys back here next week. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And we are gonna grow and we're gonna be healed from the storms of trauma. Have a blessed week.